We are CSL Energy, and we have produced this 10-minute video to expose a potential scandal in the UK domestic energy market. Over the past 3 years, CSL has closely observed the UK energy market and has modelled the market based upon a typical consumer. We conclude that it is likely that UK government and domestic consumers have been overcharged by energy companies by over £1,300 per consumer, which equates to an over £30 billion windfall for the handful of remaining energy companies. We contend that Ofgem, the UK energy market regulator, has potentially misguided both government and consumers when setting its tariff levels by overstating the impact of the inflation in wholesale gas markets on domestic energy bills. Our analysis indicates that up to December 2024, there were significant inconsistencies in Ofgem's interpretation of the impact of rising gas prices on consumer bills, leading to an open invitation to overcharge by energy companies. This potential overcharge was a consequence of Ofgem's inadequate management of energy price caps, and their emphasis on establishing maximum charges permissible for energy companies to impose on both consumers and the UK government alike during periods of wholesale gas price increases. CSL has brought this to the attention of the National Audit Office, Ofgem and political parties on numerous occasions with little or no response, so it's time to expose this scandal to energy bill payers. With reference to Ofgem's published figures for wholesale gas futures, the apparent wholesale cost of gas increased dramatically and peaked in the 3 months to March 2023. Their figures indicate gas prices rising from around £1.80 to over £12 per 100 kilowatt hours. This level of increase peaks at almost 700% in the quarter to March 2023. Ofgem set tariffs known as their Energy Price Cap, EPC, shown in column A. These being the maximum energy companies are allowed to charge for energy. They also set their Energy Price Guarantee, EPG, shown in column B. These set limits for consumer charges defining the amount energy companies are allowed to charge direct to consumers. The UK government, guided by Ofgem, covered the gap between EPC and EPG by the payment of subsidies to surviving energy companies. These are Ofgem figures that set out to evaluate the impact of these gas price hikes on consumer bills. Ofgem published quarterly rates for energy costs based on full-year values for a typical consumer. Bills supposedly were set to increase with no intervention from under £1,200 annually in September 2021 to over £4,500 by March 2023. This level of increase makes no sense. Rationalised figures for each period show a typical consumer bill to be £7,383 over the 39 months to December 2024, with government intervention limiting consumer costs to £6,263, exposing UK government to a £1,120 subsidy per consumer. Summarising Ofgem tariff caps for the period of 39 months to December 2024 by way of reference. These are the resulting figures. Total computed energy company income is £7,383 per consumer, as shown in row A, this being the aggregate total value of EPC revenues. UK Exchequer covered £1,120, and a typical consumer paid a total of £6,263 in the period, as shown in row B. Consumers therefore paid £2,379 more than the average bills at September 2021 rates. It will be noted that energy company revenues for their 26 million customers reached £192 billion, a £91 billion increase attributed to the impact of gas price hikes. Ofgem set maximum tariffs with reference to both fuel and operating costs in accordance with this table. Ofgem assessed the average fuel cost element shown in column D to have increased from £377 for the period to September 2021 to £3,137 by the 3 months ending March 2023. At face value, 3 months to March 23rd is well over an 8-fold increase. It should also be noted that for the 12-month period ending September 2023, total operating costs shown in column E also showed an increase of up to 71%. In fact, the average for the 4 months to September 2023 is over 50% compared to September 2021 levels. This increase in operating costs makes no sense and seems excessive, as neither grid costs nor energy company operating costs should have responded to increases in commodity prices, save inflation and marginal costs associated with minor additional finance-based cost elements. It can be clearly seen here that Ofgem assessments of the rate at which fuel cost has increased, highlighted in column D, are way in excess of the rate of increase for wholesale gas as set out in column B. Clearly these figures do not make sense, in particular those for the 9 months ending June 2023. We think this overcharge is partly due to confusion from Ofgem's use of annual figures for setting tariff caps, and Ofgem might have been misled by energy companies in this process. Ofgem's data clearly shows that fuel costs for electricity and gas have risen at or above wholesale gas price increases, without considering the 60% of electricity not generated from gas. No consideration has been given for gas supplies not bought on the open market, making Ofgem's perspective skewed towards energy companies. A better approach to regulating energy bills would be to calculate the actual incremental cost based on typical consumer gas usage. This way, government and consumer exposure would be limited to only the direct costs incurred by energy companies. Additionally, covering only verifiable excess costs due to market changes in gas prices could have prevented some of the over 100 energy companies from leaving the market, so maintaining fairer competition. These are CSL assumptions for the yearly kilowatt-hour usage rate of gas by a standard consumer. In Table 1, CSL assumes generously that 40% of electricity comes from gas, with a generator efficiency of 45%. It also assumes that 10% of all gas is presumed lost in transmission and usage, leaving 90% for consumption. Table 2 uses Ofgem's published definition of typical consumer usage for gas and electricity at row A. Using CSL assumptions from Table 1, CSL calculates the equivalent gas consumption for each consumer at 16,000 kilowatt hours annually as shown in row F, or 1,350 kilowatt hours monthly. It is this monthly rate of usage that is applied to estimate the financial impact of gas price hikes on a typical energy bill. Using calculated rates of usage of gas for a typical consumer of 1,350 kilowatt hours, we calculate the incremental cost of gas for the 39 months as shown. Here are the calculations. Column C shows the increased cost per kilowatt hour of gas. Using the typical consumer consumption of 1,350 kilowatt hours per month, as shown in column E, the resulting calculation shown in column F evaluates the impact on a typical consumer for each period. The total increase in gas cost would have been £1,723 per consumer. If UK government had covered this increased cost, then the total cost would have been £44.8 billion. So if Ofgem had recommended that UK government cover the raw cost of increase due to gas price hikes, then total exposure would have been £45 billion. This would have resulted in each consumer paying September 2021 price for supply of energy, in total £3,884 set out in column E, plus the cost of inflation and VAT as shown in column F. Total consumer bill for the 39-week period would be £4,328 as shown in column G. Thus, energy company income would have been regulated to £6,051 for the period. In total, £157 billion as shown in column H. This strategy would have saved both consumers and UK government a total of £1,332. As shown in column J, This reduction in energy company income would have saved the Exchequer £34 billion. Here is a summary of the potential overcharge by energy companies. Energy company incremental revenues in the 39 months were up by £3,499, equating to £91 billion as shown in row C, but incremental gas costs, as shown previously, were £1,723, which equates to £44.8 billion as shown in row D. So as operating overheads would have stayed constant at September 21st levels, and increased only by normal inflation, then this would cost an additional £445, £11.6 billion. The net overcharge by energy companies is therefore £1,332, a massive £34.6 billion. Instead, government's efforts to mitigate the crisis have been costly, with billions spent to support consumers. UK government could have avoided paying £10 billion of energy support grant. UK government could have avoided, say, £20 billion of hardship support measures. More importantly, as domestic tariffs would have effectively stayed at September 2021 rates, then UK RPI would have been restricted to operating cost inflation only. There would have been no rampant inflation in consumer bills. The knock-on impact of rampant inflation on the UK economy can be estimated at well in excess of £50 billion. Many of the 100-plus challenger energy companies could have been supported, thus maintaining a more healthy and competitive UK energy marketplace, instead of concentrating on the financial interests of the remaining 14 offshore-owned companies. The gas price subsidy of £45 billion set out above would have been money well spent. Ofgem, the UK's energy regulator, could in the worst case possibly have been guilty of complicity with energy companies, or at best delivered an unsatisfactory performance in sanctioning inflated consumer bills, impacting both households and government finances alike. Isn't it time we explore Ofgem's poor track record in more detail? Surely we should also learn lessons on how not to deal with international crises by knee-jerk measures, as we have with international gas prices. CSL has all available supporting data and hereby calls upon UK government to investigate exactly how Ofgem has performed over the last 3+ years in allowing energy companies to recover invalid cost increases in their tariff rates. Ofgem should be called to account by the National Audit Office, and the Auditor General and consumers and government should set about recovering at least the £34 billion of overpayments inappropriately paid to energy companies. We have not yet considered the commercial energy market, but see no reason why this is different from the domestic market, although overpayment levels could potentially be much higher.